notice you're basically a 2.0 version of your parents, and not always in a good way? You notice yourself repeating the same old struggles your parents battled, always stressing about money, feeling like you have to work hard to earn love, or letting that little voice in your head run amok with a megaphone, telling you you're failing. Here's the kicker. A lot of these fears, anxieties, and habits aren't really yours. They've been quietly handed down through generations, shaping your perception of the world and of yourself. It's like you thought mom's worst hand-me-down was that ugly sequin sweater with the giant shoulder pads, but surprise, it's chronic guilt. I'm talking about generational trauma. It's the invisible thread connecting your family's unresolved emotions to your everyday choices, sometimes showing up when you least expect it. Psychologists study it because understanding these patterns gives us a chance to break cycles we didn't even realize we were living and reclaim the freedom to make decisions that are truly our own. Because personally, I'd prefer not to inherit Grandpa's porcupine-shaped ceramic ashtray or his scarcity mindset. I'm Gabriella, therapist in training, sharing my grad school journey to engage, empower, and educate. In this episode, we'll dive into what generational trauma is, why it matters, and how spotting these patterns can transform your relationships, your choices, and your life. Let's start big. Generational trauma can span decades or even centuries, shaped by massive historical events. Think about the Holocaust, slavery, colonization, or genocide. People who lived through these events carry grief, fear, and survival strategies. And those didn't just disappear. They were passed down from children to grandchildren, shaping how families related to each other, managed stress, and even how they saw themselves in the world. Studies show how children and grandchildren of Holocaust survivors often carry intense anxiety, hypervigilance, or a deep sense of responsibility for family well-being, even though they didn't experience the trauma themselves. The same is true across families who experienced slavery or colonization. Patterns of mistrust, hyper-awareness, emotional suppression, and internalized shame can travel silently through generations. But you don't have to study history to recognize generational trauma. It shows up in families every day, sometimes in ways we barely notice. Now let's zoom in. In your own family, generational trauma might show up in more subtle, casual ways. Maybe your parents grew up with conditional love, so you learned to constantly seek approval or avoid mistakes. Maybe money was always tight, and even if your finances are stable now, you feel a constant sense of scarcity. Or maybe conflict was always swept under the rug, so you struggle to express your needs or have difficult conversations. These patterns are subtle but powerful. They shape how we parent, how we love, and how we see ourselves. So what does this mean for us day to day? How does awareness actually help? Understanding generational trauma isn't about blaming parents or grandparents or great-grandparents or developing a victim complex. It's about noticing patterns that shape our behavior and choices and understanding where those patterns come from. Once we can see them, we can start making conscious decisions about what to carry forward and what to leave behind. Here are a few examples of what specific behavioral patterns from generational trauma can look like when they show up in your everyday life. Chronic guilt or self-criticism. You send a text apologizing to a friend for something small, like showing up a few minutes late, and then spend the next hour replaying it in your head, thinking, I'm always messing things up, I'm such a burden. That constant self-blame becomes exhausting, even when no one else is upset. Repeating relational conflicts or habits from your parents. Every time you argue with your partner, you notice the same pattern repeating. You clam up and avoid the real issue, just like you saw your parents do during their fights. It doesn't even feel conscious. It's like your emotional autopilot is stuck on replay. Avoiding emotions to keep the peace. During a group project, you feel frustrated because someone isn't doing their part. But instead of speaking up, you smile, nod, and do the work yourself. You push your irritation down so no one feels uncomfortable, even though inside, you're simmering. Hypervigilance around safety, success, or approval. Before sending an email to your boss, you reread it 5 times. Obsessing over every word, worried you'll sound incompetent or offend them. Your chest tightens, your mind races, and you can't stop second-guessing yourself just to make sure nothing goes wrong. These behaviors are inherited survival strategies, and noticing them gives you the ability to choose differently. To all my future therapists, if you're drawn to studying generational trauma, family counseling could be an avenue worth exploring. Helping families trace patterns, understand their origins, and make intentional changes is deeply rewarding. Seeing cycles that have persisted for generations finally shift, that's powerful. At the same time, this work can be triggering. If your own family history includes neglect, abuse, intense conflict, or loss, exploring these patterns might stir up old feelings. Being a reflective therapist means noticing those reactions, allowing them to exist, and finding a way to work through them so that ultimately you can use these experiences to build understanding and empathy for your future clients. Generational trauma is both macro and micro. It's shaped by history, culture, and collective suffering. But it also lives in the subtle patterns of family life, the rules, expectations, and habits we inherit. For therapists in training, this work is a superpower. It helps you guide families in recognizing patterns, understanding where they come from, and consciously deciding what to carry forward. Just because your grandpa smoked or your mom wore ugly 80s sweaters with shoulder pads doesn't mean you have to too. Say no to the shoulder pads. And for your own life, it's a reminder. Noticing the story you've inherited is the first step towards shaping your own. Next time you notice a recurring family pattern, whether it's anxiety, guilt, or tension, pause and ask, is this really me? Or is it a story passed down through generations? Dear future therapist, thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit subscribe, like this video if you found it helpful, and we'll see you in our next session. Bye for now.